The Get Rich Slow Club podcast is a collaboration between Tash Etschmann from Tash Invest and Anna Christina from Perla. The Get Rich Slow Club acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land we record on. From coast to coast, across land, waters, and communities, we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Any advice is general and does not consider your financial situation, needs, or objectives, so consider whether it's appropriate for you.
Welcome to the Get Rich Slow Club podcast,
where we take you from beginner to confident investor,
where we can teach you everything you need to know about investing.
So come get rich slow with us.
Today's episode is a fun one because in the past we've talked about my career journey, but we haven't talked about Tash's career journey, which is a really kind of exciting story, I think.
Kind of exciting, hopefully very exciting.
Hopefully very exciting, absolutely exciting. So we're going to jump into it, but before we do, money win or loss?
Money win. I went to the movies and it was meant to be $23 full price, but I had the entertainment app and it was meant to be $14 with that. But it was really busy and they were a bit stressed and someone couldn't figure out how to do it. So they gave me the $9 student price instead.
Oh, yeah. Massive win.
So over half price off, which is really fun.
Yeah. The movies are so expensive.
Yeah.
I can't believe how expensive they were. I went like during school holidays last time and was like, whoa.
Yeah, I would never go full price. I'm always looking for some kind of way to save. Like Shopback sometimes has cheap tickets. The entertainment app is good. Sometimes they've got like cheap Tuesdays or whatever it is. But yeah, $23 is huge. And then if you buy, I think I bought a Diet Coke the other time as well. And it was like $8.
I always bring snacks with me.
We do that now.
Yeah. A lot of people do that. You have to like hide them in your bag. That was something we did as a kid. So it's kind of the frugal hacks have stayed with me.
Yeah, we actually got Soul Origin this time. They had like, there wasn't like 2 for $10 end of day specials. We were eating the Soul Origin sandwiches, which are a bit loud when you're crinkling the paper, but it was good.
What movie?
It Ends With Us.
Oh, was it good?
Yes and no. I'd read the book before. So as always, if I read the book first, I'm always a little bit disappointed with the movie.
Books are always better.
Yeah, they look different to how you've imagined them. They act a bit differently. You're like, oh my God, my whole like world has exploded. It's not what I imagined of them. Yeah. They skip past like so many different bits, which is fair enough. So good, but
read the book.
Better. Yeah.
Read the book. Yeah. Awesome.
What's yours?
So about a year ago, I sold my property. I can't believe it's been a year. And I did my Canadian taxes. In Canada, you do them the calendar year. But by the time they sort everything out, I got some money back and it was like a fairly large sum. And it makes more sense to transfer money using something like Wise, formerly known as TransferWise, as opposed to using the bank because the bank charges you so much in transfer fees. You know, if it's a wire transfer, the foreign exchange, it gets so expensive. So I got a pretty good deal. It didn't cost a lot and it made it here like in a day.
Yeah, I've heard Wise is really good. So many people recommend them for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And if you go traveling, they also have the option of being able to have money on a card. So if you're going to Europe or whatever and you need euros, you can do that as well. I haven't done that yet. That's
yeah. I haven't either, but I've been using Upbank when I travel and they seem to have very competitive foreign exchange fees as well and no like actual international transaction fees, which is good. So they're also another good idea as well.
Yeah, ING used to have that. I don't know if they still do.
Yeah, they used to rebate some ATM fees, but I don't know if they do anymore.
Yeah, it's always important to like reread that because I had a friend ask me yesterday about what bank in terms of saving rates and all the banks that I did research on like just a few months ago, everything's changed.
Yep, they have the intro rate for like 3 to 6 months. They suck you in and then they're like, oh, surprise, we're now charging you for that. And some people just don't leave. So they get hit with it. Yeah.
They're like, not only are we charging you, but now you also have to use our card and you have to deposit $200 or $500 a month.
$2,000.
Yeah. So you have to stay on top of it.
Yeah. Fun.
So let's get into your career journey. A lot of people probably know you as a educator, a financial influencer, someone who has a podcast, talks about money, but that is not originally your background. So let's take a step back to the very beginning of Tash's life.
Very beginning.
You were born. No, I'm kidding. Yes. The beginning of your career journey. What was your very first job?
I was 14 and I worked at Sizzlers. Did you guys have Sizzlers? Yeah. So they were quite big in Perth and that was my first job ever. And I absolutely hated it. Like it was not very fun at all. I think I did it for maybe max 6 months. It was like afternoons after school. I think I was maybe getting like $12 an hour. So for a shift, you get $24, which is pretty wild to think about now.
Wow.
Yeah, I hated it and then I ended up quitting.
That's crazy. For me, minimum wage when I first started out was $8 an hour.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
Maybe similar with exchange rates then.
Yeah. Maybe. Oh, that was the other thing with the exchange rate. It's awesome because you get more back from Canada here.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Looking back, I think they were doing a lot of like bad things because I remember one time I dropped a glass of wine on like someone's table, but then I look back and I was like, oh, I was very young. Like I'm pretty sure you're not meant to be serving alcohol when you're not over 18 and don't have your responsible service of alcohol.
Yeah.
So the few things in hindsight where I'm like, interesting.
Interesting. Are there any learnings from like your very first job where like in terms of your relationship with money and working?
Not really. Like I knew I wanted a job and I knew I wanted to earn money. I was still getting pocket money as well, but no big learnings just yet. I kind of just quit and ended up focusing on high school. All my friends were getting jobs. So I was like, cool, I want to get one as well. But it just it wasn't worth the stress.
Yeah, right.
But it was a good intro because everything else after that was a lot easier.
So did you have a couple jobs before you went to university that kind of followed through with your career?
So I finished high school. I just turned 17. So my whole first year out of high school, I was 17. So all my friends were going out, but I couldn't go out. I could just kind of like work, which is good. So I had so many random jobs. I was a swimming teacher going back a little bit more, I worked at H&M, the clothing store, which is great. When they first opened in Perth, that was my first kind of like intro to working really long hours because they were rostering us on for like 50 hours a week to help with the huge rush of people coming in. I worked at Specsavers as well. I had a reception job at an OT clinic. That was a really fun one. And then I was a bit sick of getting paid the lower rates for being under, I think it's like, is it 23 or something or 21, whatever the ages we get paid as an adult. So I was sick of only getting like $15 or $16 an hour. So I became a swimming instructor and I got $30 an hour for that. But the shifts were really short. So I was adding those on top of like the retail job or the reception job. And then from there I was like, well, how do I make more money and get paid $30 an hour for longer shifts? And I found support work, which is when I started making a lot more money, which was great.
So going back, like you worked in an OT office, and was that kind of your first introduction to that space because you ended up being a support worker? Like how did you know that you wanted to get into that industry?
I think I had a friend who did it maybe when you study OT. So I went straight from like high school to uni and I was always studying like at least part-time. So I did my first year full-time, but then I failed a unit and I ended up going part-time. And that's when I was kind of exploring other opportunities. Like I was already working heaps in retail and at Specsavers and stuff like that. I think they kind of just suggest you get jobs that are kind of OT related. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I just applied to heaps of different roles that sounded really fun. Like the job title was life skills trainer and the job description was like take people bowling and swimming and trampolining and stuff. So that seemed really fun. Back then I just like trolled Seek for any kind of jobs. Like I wanted any way to make more money. I had little like contract things where I worked at the AFL stadiums during game days or during concerts and stuff like that. But there's a lot of money involved in getting to those places. Like it was far away from home. You had to pay for parking or for public transport. The shifts weren't really worth it in terms of like they'd be 5 hours maybe and you'd go home. So I was just like looking for a more ideal job. And it kind of just came across where it was like, if you're an OT student, then apply.
Yeah, fair enough. Because I always wonder, are there things that people do in their life that lead them to their job or their career in the future? Yeah. Or is it just a fluke? You know what I mean?
I'm trying to think of like, I feel like I surely knew someone who was doing it, but I just can't think of who.
Yeah.
So maybe not. Because then a lot of my friends ended up coming and working with me afterwards who are OT students as well. But yeah, no, I don't know how I got that first job.
Yeah, because a lot of like my cousins or my family who have worked in healthcare ended up being nurses or working in that field. So I'm always like, oh, is that how that happened? Or was there a story behind it? Yeah.
I picked OT to study at uni because my dad made me like a decision matrix, like a spreadsheet, because I couldn't decide what I wanted to do. Yeah. And OT and physio won out as like the interesting, but you're guaranteed a job, you have a career path, like all those factors together. So
what was on the matrix?
I really liked science in high school. Like I wanted to study like chemistry for a while, but there's no like actual jobs that come directly out of chemistry. Yeah. I thought I wanted to do medicine for a little while, but you need to do a degree first to do that. So OT was kind of one of those things where you could get the skills to then go into medicine if you wanted to, but still have a job afterwards. My dad told me I probably wouldn't enjoy chemistry because I was really upset about everything that was happening to animals. And I would always cry seeing like animals in enclosures. So he was like, I don't think you want to be involved in a job where you've got to test on rats or anything. I wanted to go into mining for a while because my dad does mining, but yeah, I was kind of talked out of that as well. Yeah, it just kind of seemed like I liked working with people. I wanted to travel. I wanted like a fun, flexible job where you can kind of do lots of different things with it. No T1.
That's really important, I think, at that time in your life to consider what you want to do, because a lot of people kind of just like follow their passion. Like there's a lot of this idea of like follow your passion and a job will come, and that's not always the case, or it's really hard. Like I studied art, right? Yes. Like I studied fine art, and the jobs that were open to me was like being an art teacher. Yeah. You know, and that's not what I wanted to do.
No, my parents were very practical. They were like, what's the job after this degree? Like you don't want to have to lock yourself into doing an undergrad and a postgrad if you change your mind or you don't want to. Like do something where you can get a job straight away after it. And like that made a lot of sense.
Smart. So you're in university, you're studying, you're also working part-time because...
I was working full-time hours most of uni. So over like 2 or 3 different jobs.
Yeah, I did that too. I thought that was really great because it allowed me to explore other professions, other jobs, and add things to my resume.
Yeah, the biggest game changer for me was finding out that you could do overnight support work. So I was doing daytime support work, doing like 9 till 3, 9 till 5. They really didn't like you doing overtime. Like they tried really hard to not let anyone do overtime. They didn't want to pay you more. So when I hit that like 38-hour limit, I was like, okay, like now what? I don't really want to be a swimming instructor anymore. I don't really want to do like the retail stuff because it doesn't pay enough. What's another option? And I had someone who left that job, went and started doing 24-hour shifts, and he was earning $650 for every 24-hour shift.
Wow.
I was like, wow, that's so fun. That's a lot of money. And then I found out the weekend shifts he did, they were 6 p.m., like 5 p.m. Friday till 9 a.m. Monday, and you got to sleep as well. You got $1,600 for that shift.
Wow.
Yeah. So I got very excited. I applied for the job. I got it. And then I ended up working that job instead. But the roster was 2.5 days on, 2.5 days off, 3 times in a row. And then you got 9 days off. Then on the 9 days off, I was still working at my other job as well.
Right. So in a way, you're giving up a part of your life to be at this space for a long period of time, but you're making a lot of money. And that's something great that you can do when you're younger because it's harder to do when you're older and you have a family or any of those kind of situations.
And overnight shifts as well. Like, I worked I was probably one of the youngest people who worked that job because you were responsible for a lot of stuff. Like you were in a house and you were responsible for the house. But it was a lot of like mums with kids who work that job and trying to see them balance that was quite hard, or watching them like FaceTime their families and like trying to explain to their kids where they were, or like if someone was sick, trying to organize someone to go pick them up was quite challenging because you couldn't just like leave that job really easily. You were kind of just trapped there for your shift.
But for you, it was worth it. It was
was great.
Because the money's great.
And you got free food. They paid for your food while you were there. Yeah. Like you had no expenses while you were there. You got lots of downtime as well because they didn't expect you to work 60 hours straight. You just got to like live your life with these people who lived in these houses. And some houses were nice, some were less nice, but some were so dreamy. Some people had really fun jobs though.
So you had a lot of downtime, and I think something came out of that downtime. Is that right?
Yes. I started my Instagram, which is fun because I was doing that job during COVID and they removed our overtime limit. So you could just work as much as you wanted. And a lot of mums, when kids were staying home from schools, didn't want to work those shifts. They didn't want to put themselves at the risk of getting COVID because it was very scary back then. So it was a lot of work for me, which is really fun. But I was just like at work endlessly. I saw people in the US posting online about finances, so I decided to give it a go as well.
It was a great time to talk about finances because a lot of people were thinking about finances and they were at home and they were able to learn or educate. So it's interesting because had COVID not happened, potentially this whole new chapter of your life wouldn't have evolved.
Yeah, definitely. Because I quit my job when I got really burnt out to go do a snow season. So I was kind of doing Instagram like on the side. It wasn't a big thing yet. And then I got trapped during COVID and I had to defer uni. And I think that also played a huge part where I actually had time to start focusing on Instagram and considering other ways to make money. And my path was kind of thrown off a little bit. I think that was like if that hadn't have happened, I probably would have gone back, finished uni and worked a full-time job.
That's why I sometimes think like when the path takes you a different way, you sometimes need to embrace it because there might be like a bigger reward at the end of the path. So you had to stop uni for a bit. When did you end up going back to uni?
Well, I ended up deferring for over a year because of COVID and I didn't know when I could go back. And all I had to do was 1 8-week placement. Like I'd done everything else already, but they couldn't guarantee me a placement until I was back in Perth. But I didn't know when I could be back in Perth. But when I finally got a placement, I finished it. I think it was a year and a half later. That was a very up and down time of life.
Yeah. And you already then had your Instagram account that was like fully up and running and going.
Making money from it.
So let's go back to like the first time you realized that you can make money off of this. Cause this was obviously a passion project, right? Like you were doing Instagram on the side.
Actually, going back to timelines, I was doing my last prac when we were planning the podcast.
Oh, wow.
So
was it?
When I finally got to go back to Perth, I was like, before and after prac, I remember having calls with Zoe, like Pearla's marketing manager guy, like sitting outside my prac place at like 7 a.m. in the morning.
Oh my gosh. I thought it was earlier than that. I didn't realize that's like so recent.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I think prac finished maybe in December and we started the podcast in April the next year.
Yeah.
Last year, yeah.
I also took longer to finish my degree and I thought it was like one of the best things because it allowed me to take on some other jobs that I wouldn't have been able to do. And because a lot of people think you need to finish your degree in the allocated time, you have to be quick. And sometimes life is life and you just need to embrace it, right?
I took, 8 years to finish mine in the end.
8 years,
Yeah. It would have maybe been 6 if COVID hadn't have happened. But I'm glad it happened that way, but pretty crazy.
Yeah, life took you somewhere else.
Yeah.
So you're obviously posting. You're in the snow or wherever you might be in your
back in Perth initially.
Back in Perth at that time. Okay. And how did you get your first brand deal? How did you start making money?
I was really lucky because people reached out to me pretty quickly. I got onto TikTok while it was really easy to grow on TikTok. Like I posted, I'm really glad like it took off well because I probably would have given up if it didn't take off the way it did so quickly. But I posted like a little like photo carousel thing, but like a video version of me buying my first apartment. And that got maybe 20,000 views initially. I was like, oh my God, there's 20,000 people. This is pretty wild. And then I kept posting and sharing and answering people's questions. And then WeMoney approached me. So I think I started posting in like August, and then WeMoney emailed me in like December, a few months later, and offered me, I think it was like roughly, not saying exactly, but around like $1,000 for my first like set of like things of content. And it was like a fair bit of content back then, but yeah, it was quite good. And I was like, wow,
that's exciting.
This is, because my job was really, really challenging back then. Like I was working in a house with people who were quite violent and had lots of behavioral issues. So to go from that to like, oh, I can make $1,000 from posting videos online, like this is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy. And now it's the world's your oyster. Who knows what the future holds for Tash, right?
And then Pearler came out a few months later and from there.
So then you obviously worked with Pearler, you've worked with Virgin, you've worked with Woolworths, you've worked with some really big brands.
Yeah, 7-Eleven, that was a big win.
Yeah. And each of them obviously have different costs associated with that, different fees and so forth. And this is the big thing that I've mentioned to you so many times, where so many times people think, oh my God, you're making $1,000 off a reel or, more than that. Wow, that's so much money for a 30-second thing. But unless you've done it and grown your content in such a way where you're helping other people, you're educating other people, you're taking so much time that you're not getting paid for, I don't think people realize the crazy value or that they're getting from that free content, but also how much work goes into that 30-second reel.
Yeah, like I was making little bits of money here and there, like through WeMoney and other companies, but I didn't actually start making enough to work full time until last year. So there was like 3 years of work that had gone into it beforehand. And like, it doesn't always feel like work, but it is hard to think of content every day for 4 years. Like it is really tricky to try and keep up with people and keep up what's going on. And like, I find it really hard to try and doubt everything you're doing as well. Like you have to, before you post something, you have to be like, how is everyone going to take this piece of content? Are they going to take it negatively? Have I said something wrong? Should I fix it? It's like, that's really taxing as well.
Yeah, it's a job. It's a full-on job.
It's it's interesting comparing it to my other job because that was really emotionally draining as well because you were caring for people and there were lots of things that went wrong and lots of dramas and lots of emergencies and it was like a really draining job. But then social media is so draining in a different way. Yeah. And that may sound like really privileged to say, but I think talking about money online as well is quite triggering for a lot of people. So it's been really interesting seeing how it's draining just in a different way. Like you don't ever get that like, yay, I'm going home from work feeling.
You're always on.
Yeah, I used to love that drive home. I worked like 40 minutes away from where I lived and I love that 40-minute drive home where you're like, oh my God, like I've survived 64 hours. Yeah. I'm going home. This is so exciting. I'm going to get Macca's on the way home. But like I never get that feeling anymore.
Yeah, because you can't turn off.
Yeah, there's always more stuff.
Yeah, there's more things to think about, more people messaging you, more.
You can't do a handover. Yeah. We used to do handovers and you just like pass on the problems. We had a notebook where you just be like, yeah, good luck.
Yeah. So let's go back to social media. You've been posting quite a bit and then ASIC came out with some new information or newer information. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think that was the end of, was it 2021 maybe or 2022? Around that time. It was a few years ago now, which is pretty crazy. I wasn't making enough to make it a full-time job or even a proper part-time job. It was still like a casual on the side thing back then. But then ASIC came out and said, they kind of clarified that you do need to be licensed to be doing what we're doing online. And I got I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I was like, I'm not really making enough to pay to be licensed. I had some people quote me $60,000 a year to be licensed. Yeah.
Wow.
And they wanted equity in my business as well. And I was like, I don't even make that much. Like I can't, give you that much and also give you equity in like my half an Instagram page. That's not possible. Then I was lucky another company reached out, Guideway, and they offered to kind of make it a bit more like actually affordable for me, which is really awesome. But I was really lucky that they reached out to me because I didn't even know where to start looking for something like that. Like I knew a few people who were licensed for podcasts who were advisors, but I didn't know many people like us who didn't have finance backgrounds who were licensed. So I was like, I don't like know what the options are here.
Yeah. And for people who are kind of confused about this whole concept, ASIC, who's kind of the governing body, said that if you're going to talk about financial products and so forth, you need to have a license. And it's not as easy to go to get a license from somewhere. It's not like you go and fill out a test and you get a license. You actually need a company to essentially vouch for you.
Yeah, I have so many problems with how this industry is set up because in healthcare, you register with AHPRA, who is the body who regulates you and licenses you, and you pay like a $200 fee a year to AHPRA and you're licensed with them. But in financial services, it's all privatized where you need a private company to license you and they can just charge whatever they want and it's not regulated and it's all kind of who you know and who wants to back you and it's not standardized and there's different rules for different people and it just feels very unfair and makes financial advice very inaccessible to most people. We wonder why financial advice is so expensive. But if someone's paying $60,000 a year just for the privilege of giving advice, that's a lot of money.
And in a lot of cases, you're not giving direct advice. You're talking generally.
No, yeah.
And that's the other thing. There's a difference between giving factual advice and general advice. And you're just licensed to provide general advice, which is not personal advice. So those are three different buckets that the audience, the people need to understand between factual, general, and personal advice.
Yeah. And other rules that actually changed with ASIC's announcement, they just clarified a few things and there were some things that surprised us, like apparently giving an affiliate code to something like Perla, which is a broker, was considered dealing by arranging, which is different to general advice. Because I'm licensed to give general advice and I'm licensed to do the dealing by arranging stuff. I don't know how to phrase that. But it's just all these things came out where you're like, okay, I get needing to make sure the industry is regulated, make sure people are saying what they're saying is correct. But yeah, it's quite interesting how it all happened.
Yeah, and it's very challenging for people to navigate because not only do you have to get courses, you have to, so you went back and did courses. So let's
first. Yeah, you need to find someone. Because if you don't find someone, then you can't, it doesn't matter if you do the courses.
Yeah, exactly. So for you, Guideway reached out to you. Then what did you have to do after that? They reached out to you. They're like, hey, we would love to license you or we'd like to work with you and figure out an agreement. Then what did you have to do?
Figure out what I was signing was right. I have no idea what licensing is meant to look like. So going through all the contracts and being what am I signing my life away to? What does this all mean? What do I need to do about insurances as well? The excess for this stuff is huge if you need to use that insurance. And then I went and did the courses. So I think it took about 6 months from them reaching out to when I was licensed. I did a few of those RG 146 courses in securities. I did some on bonds, deposit products, which is savings accounts as well, in super as well. And then I did a Cert 4 in mortgage broking to get a credit license, which is a different thing as well. And then they had to apply to ASIC and that took a little while too.
Yeah. And that's all done through Kaplan.
Yes. Yeah. They're not too expensive. They're a few $100 each. Yeah. But they are not made for people like us. It's, very just ticking a box. It almost feels like.
Yeah. It's quite dry. The courses are quite dry. And it doesn't really apply to essentially what we're doing in terms of educating, communicating what we're trying to do.
Things. Yeah. It goes through all the regulations, which is fine. But then my Cert for mortgage broking had a section on how to set up your computer and how to save your files, how to name them. And that was pretty wild. And then there's also a few interesting recommendations. It was saying, your client might put all of you can recommend your client can put their everyday spending on a credit card without any more context around that, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, it's exactly what I thought financial education is before coming across what we do, right? Yeah. Very dry, very boring, very textbook. That's what those courses are like.
Yeah.
So anyways, you did all these courses. Yeah. Guideway then agreed to license you. Mm-hmm. You go through ASIC and if you look up your name, you're on ASIC, you're licensed.
Yeah.
As am I through Perler. Again, a very similar situation. Then what?
Then I could start working with people again. Then I signed a long-term contract with Perla because I'd been working with them ongoing previously anyway, and they were very supportive during this time. When ASIC brought out their announcement, a lot of companies dropped off and they were like, oh, we would never work with finfluencers. We want to work with trusted people only. There was quite a bad name against finfluencers for a while, but Perla really backed us, which was awesome. They were trying to offer us paid work in the time that we couldn't earn money as well. Because that 6-month period, you were just kind of on hold waiting for stuff to happen. Then I signed a long-term contract with them, which was amazing. And then started paying more attention to it again, being oh, cool, I can actually do more stuff. But it was hard to figure out what I could do because the rules aren't very clear still. Yeah,
because it also depends on what your company, who you're licensed under, is licensed to give. So for example, if you want to talk about, I don't know, super, is the company that you're licensed under able to talk about that?
Yeah, and figuring out what was allowed and what wasn't allowed. And having because there's a compliance thing where they review my posts and give me feedback sometimes. But it's so interesting to think about financial advisors in boardrooms watching my TikToks where I'm filming myself on the floor to give me feedback. That's quite interesting to think about. It was interesting figuring all that out. But now I think I get it.
Yeah, I had to do that too. Yeah. Be like, is this okay? Are we all on the same page? Do we agree this is general in nature? And
but it opened up a lot of opportunities. Like I was always scared because I kind of knew that like maybe I needed to be licensed. I was trying before this to find advice. Like I'd paid lawyers before. I was asking around being like, do I need a license? Some people were saying yes, some were saying no, but no one was telling me how to get one. So when ASIC came out and clarified, I was like, okay, cool, this makes sense. Yeah. But it kind of let me actually focus on the future because I was always just waiting for things to disappear beforehand. I actually lost my Instagram for 2 weeks kind of at the start as well. I had maybe 10,000 followers. I think people were reporting my account and not the fake accounts. And I got locked out for 2 weeks and I like couldn't get through to verify my identity or anything, which is pretty terrifying. So I always had this like scarcity mindset being like, oh, well, it could just disappear tomorrow.
That's sometimes a good mindset to have, but it's also, we want the abundance mindset, right? Like that's the hard part, but this has opened new doors for you.
Yeah. Now we have a podcast.
Yeah. Now you have a podcast, you have a book.
Doing it full time. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is your job.
Yeah. And I never wanted to do this full time. I was always saying like anti doing this full time, but here we are.
And how do you feel about doing it full time now?
I was after uni. So after that prac I finished, I ended up working for 6 months at a company being a positive behavior support practitioner. And I was doing that part-time and doing this part-time. And then we started the podcast.
Yep.
And I found it too hard to live in both worlds. And I was working with some people who could potentially be dangerous. And the general advice was to like have all your social media completely private, have different names on social media, like don't let anyone find out too much personal information about you. It also kind of crosses too many professional boundaries. If a client knows so much about you, like you're meant to be this like kind of separate, impartial person. But if they're watching you be like, here's my net worth and here's me traveling around the world, like it doesn't work well. So I had to make a decision whether I wanted to do this or do that. And I couldn't do both anymore. So then I quit to do this. It's been interesting. Fun, pros and cons. It's been great. Like I've done so much amazing stuff, but it's also been hard at the same time.
Because it is emotionally taxing. It is mentally taxing in a different way than your other job as well.
Yeah, like I miss being around people and I miss having a boss and I miss like going home. And I also miss feeling like I have more of a direct impact. Like I know I'm helping more people now, but I don't feel it. Like you're not working one-on-one with people in the same way. I feel like I'm not helping people who really, really, really need it in the same way. Like a lot of the clients I worked with before wouldn't be scrolling on social media to consume finance content really. They would be like focusing on, well, I need to pay my rent and where am I going to like get food from today and like all of those more immediate needs. So that's been hard. And also just like working alone is challenging as well.
Yeah. So what's next?
I don't know. Surviving.
No,
I'm moving to Melbourne, which is exciting. And I'm hoping that will help. Like coming to the studio regularly to record, getting to hang out with Emma from the Broke Generation. That'll be fun as well. There's more people in Melbourne who work for themselves. So that'd be cool as well. I want to have a co-working space and a nice routine and more of like a regular job routine.
Yeah. Watch this space. What's next for Tash?
We'll see.
And for anyone who's kind of aspiring to do what you're doing, who wants to be a content creator, who wants to talk about finance, what are some tips that they can take away from this?
It's so hard with licensing. Like I don't know where people even start properly now because you're not meant to really do it without being licensed, but it's also impossible to get licensed unless you know someone or you have a profile or you have a lot of money. I think just start in terms of like talking about saving tips. Like don't talk about investing, but just talk about general saving tips and just like see if you enjoy it, see if you enjoy making content and just try. Like my first bits of content were terrible compared to now where I can kind of make decent things sometimes and I've got more of my style. But yeah, just like experiment, see what happens. See if you even like it. See if you get a job out of it. I know so many people have gotten jobs from doing it. Like just give it a go.
Awesome. Those are great tips.
Hopefully ASIC will change how they license people. But yeah, I don't think so anytime soon.
Would you like to see that?
Yeah, definitely. I want it to be more like OT or like any kind of healthcare, like nurses, doctors, paramedics. It's all like centralized and not privatized. Like things need to change for financial advice to be cheaper, but that is a whole other rant.
Yeah. And especially the education piece being a bit more specific, I think, to education, like how to educate if you want to be an educator.
Why is there not like a diploma in like money coaching?
Yes,
or
exactly.
Why is there not like an add-on for health professionals?
Yep.
Like being a positive behavior support practitioner, you could have like any kind of allied health degree to do that. And then you did training directly with your company and NDIS to be registered for that. I feel like we could do that with this. Like have any kind of like teaching, social work, healthcare background, add on a money coaching qualification and then like you're qualified, but there's not.
Maybe that's the next thing for Tash.
No, I don't know.
It's too big of a system to fix, but maybe at least maybe if more people are talking about it and it becomes a bit more accessible to even reach out, because like talking to a financial advisor versus a money coach, like those are different people with different needs, and it's important to kind of clarify what those needs are, right?
And like OTs have all the skills to do it. They just need some of the more financial education skills, but there's room under NDIS for like financial capability funding as well. Like this could be such a properly funded area. And like so many people need it. Like I've worked with so many clients. There was one person I worked with who would burn their bills because they were so stressed about money and they just didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
And there was like the fire hazard risk and everything. But like all those health professionals are so well trained already to work in this space if they had like that extra unit about money as well.
It's great to see your skills be so transferable.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can really do anything if you want to.
And on that note,
Yay.
thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for joining us. If you found this episode helpful, please rate us 5 stars, write a review, or share with a friend. If you're new to investing, make sure to listen to our first 10 episodes. Follow us at Get Rich Slow Club or Tash at Tash Invests or me at Ana Cristina.
This show was brought to you by Natasha Etschmann, who is an authorized representative 1299881 of Guideway Financial Services, AFSL 420367, and Perla, who is an authorized representative 1281540 of Sanlam Private Wealth, AFSL 337927. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to investing. So make sure you check out our financial services guides and read the product disclosure statement and target market determination for any investments you're considering. See our show notes for more info.